Iowa football fans looking ahead to 2025, but the coaches and the coaching staff, of course, have to look even further ahead than that. We've got commits to talk about for the next hour right here on Hawkeyes Live. We appreciate your flexibility in joining us here on a Tuesday afternoon, as always, but Tuesday at 1 Eastern and noon Central. Corey Bratter right next to me, of course, from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Corey, how are you?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm enjoying a little bit warmer where I'm at. I took a little vacay here for a couple of days, and so um, looking forward to getting back at it back home. But I'm enjoying the warmer weather, and I wish men's basketball was in a better place. They're struggling incredibly poor performances on the road. They had another one last night at your Ohio State Buckeyes, and so. Women tonight, lots of stuff going on, and then of course spring ball here in about a month or whatever, month and a half, and yeah, some recruiting momentum for football. Obviously, it seems like some of these are timed up. I don't know the ins and outs of all that. I've not had conversations with any of our three recent commits, WHITTERS, Parliament, and LINDER, but all three solid prospects, and there'll be nice pieces for George Barnett, assuming that this staff is still in place here in the next couple of years.
I believe Hudson Parliament is the highest ranked, at least according to 247 Sports, the number one rated player in the state of South Dakota and a top 20 defensive line prospect.
Yeah, I mean, and you know where I stand with this. I always look at offer lists, and you're going to typically get the same type of, or I say kids from the same basket that are getting the same group of offers, like Iowa State, Kansas State. A lot of those schools, Minnesota is typically in on Iowa kids. And at least with these battles, Iowa beating a lot of those schools out. And the other two as well. WHITTERS, he's a kid that maybe not as, like you said, as highly regarded as a Hudson Parliament. They've got good size. Parliament's a 26 kid who probably is going to grow a little bit more. I think is projected as an interior guy, but he's already listed at 6'4", 285 on surface level. That's pretty good size. And LINDER as well. I mean, he's a kid who probably going to be interior, I would think. Although he's listed, I noticed this, he's listed as a tackle. He's 6'5", 280. He's listed as a tackle on 247, and I believe on 3's got him as an interior guy. So again, I've not had conversations with him. He's considered to be a top 50 guy, regardless of position. If you look interior or a tackle, number 3 player in the state of Minnesota. If you scroll down, Mark, you can see some pretty good offers in there for another 26 kid in LINDER. Again, Arkansas, SEC school. You got the Kansases, the Iowa States. Kansas State offered him, had a Cal offer. So he was getting some national interest. And obviously any SEC interest always, for a kid that's from the Midwest, these 3 kids straight from around the state of Iowa, just on the border. So, yeah, solid. I mean, I don't know. I'm very bad. I'll admit this freely. I'm not good at evaluating O-linemen. And we missed on I was missed on a number of these guys. Some of it's injury related. We've discussed this. I don't think we need to run through the gamut of all the guys that have come through the program and not ended up panning out. But they've had a lot of 3 to 4 star kids that come to the program, never play, transfer out, retire due to medical issues. So it's just hard to project. But on surface level, you're like, okay, well, Kirk knows what he's doing. He's an O-line guy, and Barnett should know what he's doing. He's got Midwest roots, strong Midwest roots. He's done a pretty good job landing who he wants to land in general, with the exception being a couple of highly regarded kids from the state of Iowa whose names will remain unmentioned for today. So yeah, positive recruiting momentum. It seems like they want grouped commitments. They would rather 3 guys commit within a span of about a week than it being spaced out. And I think that probably makes sense. I would think that probably is good.
What am I missing there? Why does it matter?
Well, I would think it's positive recruiting momentum. Just having 3 guys commit all at the same time, it just, from an outside perception standpoint, other recruits, I would have to think, see that, especially other guys that have been targeted, offered, have visited with guys like this. They're like, okay, wow, something's good is happening here. as opposed to if one guy committed in January, another guy commits in February, another guy commits in March.
Okay.
This is going to turn heads more than just a random 3-star recruiting at a random, committing at a random time. That would be my 2 cents of it all.
No, that makes sense. That did not necessarily hit me. So yeah, Linder out of Minnesota, he's a top 4 player in the state there. As you mentioned, at least the 247 sports rankings are number 28 as an offensive tackle. And then Colin Whitters, player out of the state, him being closer to home within the state of Iowa. What do you know about his high school program, that area, that level of football?
Well, Iowa City West High has produced a number of really good prospects over the years. So, and I believe so. I'm not a high school Iowa high school expert, but I'm trying to think short list. I think Oliver Martin was West High. There's City High, and then there's West High. Sean Bach or Elliott Clough would probably be able to do a better job of kind of evaluating high school level. But a lot of really good prospects have come out of Iowa City West High, and frankly, the surrounding areas. Been some good players out of Tipton. There's been some good players out of Williamsburg. Caden Weegan comes to mind. I believe he was Williamsburg, if I'm not mistaken. And it's some good offers too out of Iowa City West High. Had an SEC offer in there. I think Mizzou offered Whitters, and he's got pretty good size. Let me pull up his profile here. No, Missouri did not offer him. Kansas State was the offer that Missouri was in on him. Kansas State offered Iowa State. Had a Lindenwood offer, Mark. So I know you're a big Lindenwood
Sure.
recruiting expert.
Powerhouse that is Lindenwood out of course, Lindenwood, Kansas.
Again, the size is what.
Did I get that right?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
The size is what impressed me about all of these guys. Here's another guy who is a 2026 kid, already physically. I don't know why we have to have a picture of him with his shirt off for his profile picture. I think that's strange.
I got to say, it's so small on my screen, I didn't even notice it.
Well, I just think it's weird. Anyways, moving along. 6'4", 300. I mean, big kid, right? He'd have the pack. Like Cade Pieper. Cade Pieper came in here, and he's already playing on the interior of that line. He came in at like 245 or 250, something really small like that. And these guys are all, like all 3 of these guys, I think are all in the 280 to 300 range already. And they're 26 kids. So, everybody wants to bring up, size and whatnot. And I've downplayed that at times. I don't know that you can just look at, well, this team's got a bunch of 315-pound mugs, and that means that they're going to be better offensive line. But, it's hard if you're not some O-line guru. The people that act like, unless you're a former coach or you've scout, you're a professional scout, or, you Tyler Barnes, for instance, it's going to be hard to comb through 100 offensive linemen that are all 3-star prospects and figure out, okay, which one has the best lateral speed with their feet and quickness. And, I just think size is one thing you have to look at this level. And if a guy's already 6'4", 300 with another year to go, that's probably a positive sign.
So to your point, I once was on a podcast with a guy that I forget what his credentials were exactly, but they were mighty impressive about offensive line play in college football and then projecting to the NFL. And he had done all these various stats measurements of, burst, explosion, they time all that stuff now, and then combined with, weightlifting totals and so forth. And he basically said, based on their studies, there's a threshold. Yes. Especially for some of the group of 5 and maybe some of the lesser Power 5 programs, that weight does matter toward NFL stardom, but there's a threshold because, whatever that is, 300 pounds, let's say. So it doesn't matter that you're 350. That doesn't make you any more NFL ready than it would for a 300 pounder. But if you're at 280 coming out of college, then your chances of making an NFL roster and an impact. And then he also talked about weightlifting, like squat numbers, bench press numbers that you would think, oh, the strongest guys in America, they're the most NFL ready. No, he said it's a threshold, like whatever the weight measurement was, like 500 pounds, that if you're there, then you have a far better chance that if you can lift 450, you can squat 450 if you hit 500. But like beyond that, it's not measurable. It doesn't matter. So there's all those things are important, but there's a limit to, you got to be an athlete, obviously. You got to understand your assignment. You got to be able to execute it. All those things that come into play.
And again, I'd like to look back at previous recruiting classes. It wouldn't be hard to do this, but if you go back and look at O-line commits from the last 5 to 6 years, how many of those guys were, close to 300 when they committed? I would guess few of them. I can't. That doesn't seem to be a thing. I'm even thinking of the last few big tackles that they've had. Like I'm thinking Jack Dotzler out of Wisconsin, Cale Crow from Huxley, Iowa, and Cannon Leonard. Like those were all big 6'6", 6'7", 6'8" guys. And I don't think those guys were even close to 300 pounds, maybe 280. But, a couple of these guys are projected as interior guys and are already pushing 285, 290, 300. So, yeah, it's interesting. I do think we've seen a shift at receiver, the way Iowa's recruited or who Iowa has targeted as it relates to size. We've discussed that. It seemed like during the Brian Ferentz, Kelton Copeland era, there was more of an emphasis on getting big hand, long receivers for some obvious reasons, but I think also maybe a little bit overhyped, the size aspect of things. And now that Lester is here, and whether you want to give some of that to Budmeyer, I think the Lester effect is there. Smaller, quicker receivers, stronger route runners out of high school, even what they've done in the portal. And so I don't know if we've seen a shift at all related to Tim Lester. I don't think Tim is probably doing much as it relates to saying, well, we want this offensive lineman. I don't think, I don't think that's his job, nor does he care. He's got his offense, but he's not meddling in with what George Barnett, Kirk Ferentz are going to be doing with the offensive line. There is an aspect of too many cooks in the kitchen. That's why I also think part of the problem was with Brian Ferentz being the offensive coordinator is he's a former offensive lineman, and you got him working with quarterbacks where at the same time he's got expertise with offensive line, but you've got how many offensive line gurus on your roster, and the O-line was never good when he was the coordinator. So I think I think they have what they need now as it relates to coaching talent. They have the guys that, with the exception maybe being Bud Meyer at receivers coach, because he's a former quarterback who's never coached receivers until this past season. But you have the offensive coordinator that can assist him. So I think finally they have the right compilation of people coaching the right positions.
I think it's fairly accurate to say, if you look around college football, that the offensive coordinator, that is typically their sole position. And if there's an addendum to that, then they are the quarterback's coach. They're
right.
Obviously closely tied to the quarterback. Where on the defensive side, there's usually some type of safeties position that's involved there, or a smaller group of players that go along with the title of defensive coordinator. Does Phil Parker, does he have a group that he oversees?
Guy. He's the whole DBs guy.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a pretty big group, though. That's safeties and corners.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of that assignment also kind of trickles down to cash, because that's kind of a hybrid linebacker type of position that they usually use a DB for.
Do you happen to know what Phil Parker makes per year?
I think he's like 1.1 or 1.2 now.
Did you hear what Jim Knowles got from Penn State?
I did. What was it? It was
so Jim Knowles was making $2.75 million at Ohio State. I believe he was the highest paid coordinator in the country.
That's nuts.
And it was $3 million with his bonuses once those kicked in for the playoffs, et cetera, et cetera. $3 million. Penn State gave him a 3-year deal for $9.3 million. He's making 3.1 base salary at Penn State.
Why are they willing to pay him that? Is he that good that they need to pay him 3 point some million a year?
I had the Penn State guy on from Rivals last night. I made a similar question in a different way. I said, who are the last several defensive coordinators? Well, they are Tom Allen, Manny Diaz, Brent Pry, who all have head coaching experience at the Power Five level and have extraordinary defensive backgrounds. I said, why are they willing to pay this guy that much money? Is he that good? I don't necessarily see it. I know that Ohio State's loaded from a talent standpoint on defense, and he did a nice job at Oklahoma State. It took him some time to get to that point, but I just think I just think it's a bit extreme.
Cheviota says that Phil got bumped to 1.9 million last year, so I don't doubt that. And I don't even know what Tim Lester is making.
Just to make another comparison there within the conference, Indiana just gave its defensive coordinator, Bryant Haynes, I believe is his name, a bump to 1.8 million. And he doesn't have anywhere close to the experience or the success track record of Phil Parker. So I don't know how much Phil Parker's invested in, his own portfolio and so forth, that he would want to go in and say,
yeah, I don't think Phil, I don't know. I don't think Phil cares. At this point, like, Phil could have made so much more taking a head coaching job somewhere else, and I have no doubt he's had opportunities. I mean, right? Isn't it fair to say, Mark, he's probably had Power 4 schools that would have hired him as a head coach by now?
Well, what you're bringing up, I think, could be related, or maybe not necessarily related. That somebody could say, I am just a coordinator. I don't want to run a football program. I just want to coach and coordinate the defense, versus a money aspect, and just flat out saying, I'm well paid, I'm good, I'm in the top 10, whatever, that's fine, I'm well taken care of. Or, hey, I want to be paid the best.
Yeah, I'm not 60 some years old like Phil Parker is, but at the same time, I think about his decision to stay as a coordinator and not pursue head coaching opportunities. And I'm like, it makes sense. 1 point, whatever he's making, if it's 1.9, I mean, unless you're living some lavish lifestyle, what? And I'm pretty sure Phil Parker's not. He probably still has his occasional trip to Arby's. My guess is he is more than satisfied with what he's doing. He's probably, I mean, obviously he loves coaching defensive backs. And the other thing, Mark, is you agree to a deal. I don't know how long of a deal it is for some schools, but the stress that comes with a 4 to 5 year deal as a head coach, you may have that guaranteed for 4 to 5 years, but then you get fired, and now you're all of a sudden trying to put your foot back in the door at a lesser place that you're not as comfortable at. It makes sense why he wouldn't want head coaching opportunities. Part of me also thinks that a guy like Phil would like an opportunity somewhere before his career is ending, but I don't know that some people are wired that way, and that's to Iowa's advantage. I do think, not to go on a tangent here, but I do think that LeVar Woods is wired to be a head coach. I think he wants to be a head coach someday. And I think Seth Wallace, same thing. I mean, he's got, I think he's got promotions within Iowa that hopefully he'll achieve, especially when Phil moves on. Hopefully Iowa can keep him. But there are some people that you detect that. And it doesn't make any one person less or more of a coach, but some people are just wired differently.
And those two guys might have strong enough resumes to get a Power 5 head coaching position right out of the gate.
Yeah, that will be interesting to see what. I don't know about LeVar. LeVar's been like, that special teams unit has been so good. But like Cheviota brings up in the chat, he's making Seth Wallace is making more than LeVar Woods. Is that fair? I don't know. I think that was based on what I was told. That was Iowa bumped Wallace up to $1 million a year and gave him that assistant to the head coach role, basically to stave off the people that were trying to get him to go somewhere else to be a coordinator. My understanding is Minnesota wanted him as a defensive coordinator here, a year or two, whenever they were looking for a change there. And I'm sure that had to kind of irritate LeVar Woods, who's been the special teams coordinator for a number of years, has been dominant, has been elite across the board. So that had to probably annoy him. Remember, didn't he interview for that Tampa Bay Bucks job like right after they announced Wallace was taking that promotion? And so he didn't take the job, and now Mason Woods is going to be a Hawkeye this coming year. So I'll be interested to see what the future holds for LeVar as well. But yeah, back to the coordinator thing. That was the problem. This is the catch-22 we had with Brian Ferentz. He's a former O-line guy who's never coordinated an offense before Iowa, had never called plays. He's not a natural play caller because he's not a quarterback. And, he's a former offensive lineman who's coached tight ends. So you have him as the offensive coordinator plus the tight ends coach at one time. And then all of a sudden you're going to move him to quarterbacks coach. So now you have a non-tight ends guy coaching tight ends. You have a non-quarterbacks guy coaching quarterbacks. And you have a wide receiver coach that had failed to that point. And that's how you become the worst offense in college football. And now I think those things have been sorted out to an extent. You still have Abdul Hodge coaching tight ends. Honestly, tight end involvement really took a step back this year for Iowa's offense. I don't know if that's a sign of things to come. If that's just this new offense. I thought they'd be more involved. I thought from a performance standpoint, we saw much less from Luke Lachey than I would have anticipated. And I don't know where he's projected to be drafted here in a couple of months. I have no idea. I would think he's going to be drafted. I can't imagine he wouldn't, but his numbers were very pedestrian. And so they got a really good room coming back, but I have no idea what involvement's going to look like. Because I would think as Lester continues to get receivers, I would only think it becomes more of a receiver-centric offense. You would have thought if they were going to involve the tight ends, it would have been during this transition year where you had better talent at tight end. But they still cut down on wide receiver or tight end involvement. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves.
Ohio State, Michigan, the greatest rivalry in sports deserves the greatest debate in sports. Monday, February 17th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the main channel. It's the Ohio State, Michigan all everything debate with me, taking your calls all night if it takes all night. I'm pulling no punches, so beware. Bring your best intel. It's the Ohio State, Michigan all everything debate. It will be epic. February 17th, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Be there. My patience has run out to a certain extent, Corey. So I've seen enough lunacy and idiocy out there. So I am clearing the deck, and I'm going to be here as long as it takes, taking whomever's phone calls about that specific topic all night, comments and questions. Or maybe I'll only be here for 20 minutes and I'll go on a soliloquy and nobody will call. I don't know. But I think we've got enough of a Michigan contingent to keep things pretty hot and heavy. So I'm expecting quite the bloodbath in a few weeks.
How have Michigan fans reacted to Ohio State's national title? Because I'm really not locked into that. Like, what has been the? Is it still just we're going to rub in the fact that we've won 4 straight in the series?
Sure.
I'm sure
And
that's still
fine.
there, right?
That's fine. This is a little nuance to it that might be nitpicky, but this is what bothers me, and I correct it. It's fine to say you won 4 consecutive in the series. That's a fact. That's truth. I would capitalize on that if I was a fan base in the same situation. 4 consecutive wins. That's impressive. But I keep seeing this 0-4, 0-4 all over the place. And it's like connected to Ryan Day. Well, Ryan Day's 1-4. Okay, Ryan Day's 1-4. Sharon Moore. Here's another thing that they like to do. So Jim Harbaugh, because of all the shenanigans, obviously we had cheating involved for 3 seasons.
Right. Yes.
He didn't coach the 2023 game. Sharon Moore did. So I will hear Michigan fans who say Sharon Moore's 2-0 against Ohio State, and then they'll cite that Jim Harbaugh won 3 consecutive games. Well, you can't double dip and overlap the wins. You got to give one guy credit for the win, not the other guy, not both of them. And officially, Sharon Moore gets credit for the win in 2023, not Jim Harbaugh. So Jim Harbaugh, who they want to, erect a statue to, is 2-5 against Ohio State. So
Who
I don't know.
literally hopped out of town as his team as he was under investigation for cheating, which was basically an admission of as much. Nobody likes him. Nobody admires him. Nobody likes him. Nobody cares.
Well,
Nobody
that's a bit of
admires
an
him.
extreme comment.
Well, they don't. They don't like nobody he's not charismatic. Nobody cares. Nobody cares what he's done. Nobody's rooting for the Chargers to have success. Everybody took pleasure when they were out of the playoff. Like nobody cares. That's just the reality of it. But Michigan fans don't have to like it, but nobody cares.
You would think I would make that statement. I wouldn't say nobody cares. Obviously, you're being extreme there.
Well, I didn't care. Listen, it's nothing personal, but I didn't care for him before all that cheating stuff. Because you hear him talk, and it's like, or they're just like, what is he saying? What's going on upstairs? Yeah, he just looks at the camera and, yeah, we're gonna get that. We got to get those recruits in, and we're gonna have to beat them. That's what we're gonna do. Like it's just like I don't know what's behind those. I don't know what's going on.
There's something going on because he's highly successful. But I like you. I have the same
I don't know what he says.
thought process when I hear him speak. I'm like, what is going on? He can't explain anything.
No, he can't. And it's cheap. It's almost like I'll give you an example. He's a less articulate version of Brian Kelly. Like Brian Kelly does those corny, embarrassing things.
Yeah.
Like when he got in front of that LSU crowd and started trying to speak with a Southern drawl.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing? Or when Jim Harbaugh did a pool jump with Oliver Martin in Iowa City that year. It's just weird stuff or whatever that was. Or when he did a sleepover at that. It's just, I mean, just strange, corny things that you don't want to see grown men do. And he's doing them, and then he can't even explain why he's doing them. At least Brian Kelly is articulate, and he just seems like a typical Notre Dame LSU. Like that's a perfect path for him. Notre Dame to LSU. That's a perfect. He was always destined to be an SEC coach. I think Jim Harbaugh is destined to be an SEC coach. I think Jim Harbaugh ends up returning to college football and ends up in the SEC. That's my guess.
Wow. That just came out of nowhere.
He'll go NFL, Big Ten, NFL, SEC.
Okay. Yeah, I've never put Brian Kelly and Jim Harbaugh in the same category, but
yeah, I wouldn't either, except on the corny level. Yeah,
like
they do a lot of corny, weird stuff.
Jim Harbaugh has just never impressed me as I don't want to say as a leader, but as a speaker and as a communicator has never impressed me.
What's there to be impressed with?
There's not. There's nothing there.
What's interesting is that Michigan fans somehow, someway, like this is an Iowa channel, and one would expect this to just be Iowa fans that don't care about our opinions on this. But especially after this video gets posted, all the cowardly people will end up in the comment section, and they'll be ripping probably me more than you, but they'll be ripping us because then we can't respond to them live. Like they can't even type it in the live chat because that's how they are. So they'll find their way here and they'll hear these comments, which means they're watching an Iowa show for 30 minutes to get to this point, and then they'll get mad about the comments made. And that's, it's the nature of it.
So again, folks, this is February 17th at 6 p.m. Eastern time. It's a Monday over on the main channel. I guess we'll simulcast on the Ohio State and Michigan channels. Basically, I've had enough. I've had enough just idiocy and inaccurate information and so forth. So I'm going to just lock myself in and take nothing but Michigan calls. That's it. I'm not taking any calls from Ohio State fans. Since I announced this yesterday, I've had a few people, Ohio State fans, oh yeah, I'll be there with you. I'm going to call. No, I'm not taking your calls. I don't need any help.
Let me think about it. Well, let me just think see if I can remember some of your marquee Michigan people. You got Mike Fort, right?
Yes.
You've got Michigan Man.
Yep.
You've got John D'Adamo.
Oh yeah.
You've got let's see.
You got Moose.
Okay, I'm sorry. Moose. You've got Moose. You've got the two guys that did your Michigan podcast for the first couple of years. Right?
Yeah, they're not around. I don't see them.
They're not around anymore.
I don't believe so. I don't see them.
What happened to them?
They're good guys. I don't know. They just kind of wandered off. I don't know exactly what happened.
They wandered. And then who else am I missing? Is
You get
there
a lot
other?
of Michigan fans. I attempted to take a poll to try to get a fan base distribution of our following, and we've got by far the most are Michigan fans. Probably like 400 people responded.
And then is TJ Ohio State or is he Michigan?
TJ's a Michigan guy.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, he would be quite upset to hear you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
Michigan guy through and through.
Okay.
Hates Ohio State.
And then of course Steve Dace, which most Hawkeye fans know who Steve Dace is. And I wouldn't say he's one of your guys, but he collabs with you. So
Yeah. To the point that he has me on his podcast.
Yeah.
Like every week, almost every week.
And I will admit, I used to watch his podcast, listen to his podcast, because I think he knows what he's talking about. But I have not in a long time, but I did always enjoy the segments with you and him. So
Well, I appreciate that. I'll tie in Iowa football with Steve Dace here because I will be recording with him in about 2 hours. So he every off season comes up with a list of 25 items that he is making. I forget what he calls it. He's got some clever name for it. His predictions for the season. And I'm just not talking about Iowa's going to go 9-3, like situational predictions. And they're quite interesting. Well, there's one Iowa related one because I had to review these because he wants me to comment on them. So he sent these to me. And some of them are outlandish and they have a snowball's chance of happening. So his prediction for Iowa this season was that Kirk was going to retire and Lance Leipold was going to be the next Iowa head coach.
All right. Where is Lance Leipold now? Isn't he?
Kansas.
Kansas. All right. I always get him and Kleiman kind of confused. Because Leipold was where? Wasn't he in the FCS before?
He was at Buffalo.
Okay, he was at Buffalo. Kleiman was FCS. Kleiman
Yes.
was he North Dakota State?
You're asking me. I believe it was North Dakota State. He won a bunch of championships. So I know that
Dakota
all those
State.
championships are up there, and I think they're North Dakota State. Yes.
Right. I'm not going to get into my FCS thing. I just think you should,
Yeah, let's.
I think you could do more with FCS, but we can move on.
Well, yeah, we are releasing power rankings for the conferences. So where do you think I had Iowa placed in the conference power rankings?
I'll go 8th.
7.
Okay. Yeah.
Iowa at 7. And
Okay.
now I'm going through and I'm going to do conference rankings. I'm about to release the SEC. And then I'll go through the Big Ten and all the results, and then I'm going to rank the conferences 1 through 4.
Okay. So you're not going to give away where those are ranked. Everybody wants to know who the top 2 are. Well, we know who the top 2 are, but where
I think
would
it's
you
actually
rank?
pretty close. I think logic would say, without looking at numbers, it's the Big Ten.
Yeah. And when you look at the numbers, does it still say Big Ten?
It's not real decisive, that's for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
The SEC has better numbers on the field.
Yeah.
20-13 against the other conferences. The Big Ten 16-16. So that's a start. That's not where I end the argument, but I go much deeper than that.
Yeah. Are you going to do a power rankings for your contributors? Like rank your contributors.
That's a good idea, actually.
Rank your contributors 1 through 50.
I wonder, I don't know how people would respond to that.
How would your contributors respond to it? You got if they're 50, does that mean they got to work harder?
Well, if they're in the top 50, I would think that would be, you could look at it that way. It would be.
Oh, so you're just gonna give a top. You wouldn't rank them all the way like.
Well, considering I've had about 4 seconds to think about this, I don't really know.
Would you have would you do like your bottom 8 or something?
No. All people are welcome. All viewers are welcome. You should do that.
What am I
You
going
could
to
do
do?
that as well. Rank your top contributors, your top viewers.
No, I mean, I'm talking about people that are part of your
I
network.
Oh, you're talking about like you
Well, no,
and others?
I'm barely a contributor for you anymore, but I'm saying your people that are hosting shows and
Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa.
you rank
That's
those.
entirely different. No, I'm not ranking them. No, I thought you were talking about viewers.
That's a good idea too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The real
Yeah.
MVP.
He'd be on your list. He would be on your list. Yeah.
Oh, very high.
Uh, Mark,
Hmm.
what are we going to talk about the rest of this show? We got like
We don't necessarily need to continue. It's just
oh,
you know,
we're 35 minutes into the show. Is there anything else? Oh, great! I just got a release here a second ago. Aaron Graves has been nominated Academic All America. That just came in here just moments ago. The announcement was made on Tuesday by College Sports Communicators, formerly the College Sports Information Directors of America. He has a perfect 4.0 grade point average, two-time academic All Big Ten and Dean's List honoree.
good for him.
So
It's impressive.
there's that.
Okay, I've got two ideas going forward as we ready ourselves for spring practice. Number one, we would go through all the positions, take one or two per week.
Yep.
Leading into spring practice. And number two, my favorite project that I have nothing to do with, it's all your work, would be going through these recruiting classes.
Yeah.
Past recruiting classes.
Re-ranking?
So I'm going to throw two of those at you every week. And then you can tell me, no, I'd rather talk about running backs this week. Let's save offensive line or whatever.
So, and then the other thing you've recommended for my channel, which it's not like I don't have enough to do on my channel, but one of the things you've recommended is just ranking players. So you got 105 scholarship players now, rank 1 through 105.
You can talk about all these guys off the cuff. This would be very little work for you to do a profile on each player.
What would it? Isn't that insulting to the kid that's 105 though?
If you want to take it that low, that's up to
I mean,
you.
how do you rank somebody 105 out of 105? I mean, I obviously, I guess as long as it's making an offensive player because they're
Rank
used to
the
being
top
ranked.
50.
But as long as it's an offensive player, Iowa offensive players are used to being ranked at the bottom, right?
Rank the top 50.
All right. Or at least the top 100 and then the bottom 5 are. No, that's a good idea. I am going to do that because I think it's a good debate worthy conversation to have, you know, because it's so subjective, right? You know, how much does a person weigh? Well, this person plays this position, so
Yeah.
I don't look at it that way. I look at it quality of player for their
Yeah.
given position. That's how I would approach it.
I'm right there with you. I've got tons of lists of content to get to. I always like to rank the coaching hires. I also like to do a coaching hot seat. I like to do a way too early top 25. I'll do the program rankings currently and all time.
And you're going to do a trending up, trending down program thing.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
Talked about that.
Wisconsin definitely trending down. They're the first ones that just popped into my head.
Florida State trending down.
Oh, yeah.
Indiana trending up. Although I get the feeling you don't think that's going to be sustained.
Not to the level of this past season.
No, but when you compare it to what that program has been.
Oh, sure.
So, you know.
Iowa seems to be flatlining. I don't think they're
so?
trending one way or the other.
Did I see an early over under at 6.5? Because I had kind of thrown that out there. I thought I saw that somewhere.
That's what I heard. Somebody told me that.
Jeff Schlechter in the chat wants to know if there's any rumors that Ohio State's going to be going after Phil Parker. Is that actually out there?
I have not heard that. I ran down 8 candidates last night, and Phil Parker was not one of them, and I cannot imagine that he's budging.
So would you say, when you say you don't imagine he's one of them, is that just because you don't believe he has any reason to want to go there?
Yeah, of course, they would love to have him.
Okay. No, I'm sure why wouldn't they make a phone call unless it's just widely known that he's not interested in the job? I have not heard that anyway. Now I'm not on. Look, I've made this very clear. Very rarely do I consider myself to be an insider on any of this stuff. Once in a while, but I have not heard any. I'm not on message boards. I've not heard any rumors. I don't know where that rumor comes from. So Jeff, if you want to share that, I'd love to know. But no, I don't think I would seriously doubt that. Although when I go to Google and I search Phil Parker, it does one of the big things that comes up. Iowa Hawkeyes DC named possible. Should I share my screen on this, Mark?
Sure.
Let's share the screen. Jeff brought it up, so it's a good topic. We're looking for topics.
Understanding, of course, that there is a difference between somebody having some kind of insight into the situation and then somebody just conjecturing that, okay, here's arguably the best defensive coordinator in the country. Here's Ohio State with all sorts of money and prestige, and just putting the two together.
I don't know who Evan Massey is, full disclosure, but he may just be, Sports Illustrated has what they have, like their own group of fan writers, I think, as well. Anyways, let's see where he's I'm not going to read this whole article, but let's just see where he's getting his information. Dan Hope of 11 Warriors has suggested Phil Parker as a potential candidate for the Ohio State job. Okay, well, there you go.
That is a pretty substantial site, but that doesn't mean that they know anything.
Yeah. So he's a Ohio native. I guess there's one connection that was made. But he admits it would be a surprise if Parker left to become a DC elsewhere. So that would be that would be a shock, right? And I guess there was 2 other here. Here's the original 11 Warriors. So he's looking at 11 possible candidates. So Matt Guerrieri,
he's already on the staff. Yeah.
Ohio State safeties coach. Tim Walton, secondaries coach.
Yep.
Jim Leonard. So Jim Leonard's with the Broncos now. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I didn't either until yesterday.
Interesting. Randy Bates, Jared Mayo. Okay. Where's he at now? Is he not doing anything?
Since he left the Patriots, since they got rid of him. I don't know.
John Haycock. There's an interesting name. What about our guy? What's the guy's name that just got fired from? Well, no, did he get fired yet? He hasn't gotten fired yet, has he? Ryan Walters, has he gotten fired?
Yes, he got fired.
Okay, what about him? Why not Walters?
He did a great job with Brett.
Mike Tressel, okay. And then worth a call. Jeff Hafley, DC for Green Bay. Luke Fickell,
who's already been their DC at Ohio State.
How about this name? Luke Fickell.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, I guess Chip Kelly, they've already done that with one coordinator, right? They've gotten him to leave a head coaching position to be a coordinator, but wow, that would be something.
And Luke Fickell has deep ties to Ohio and Ohio State.
Right. Phil Parker's an Ohio native. We mentioned him. And then Glenn Schumann. And is he... Okay, so I guess it's the whole poaching premise, right? Since Penn State poached Knowles away from Ohio State. I could kind of see that, but would there be any reason for the Georgia DC to leave that job to go to Ohio State? Realistically,
you wouldn't think the Ohio State DC would leave to go to Penn State, go to a lesser program.
But if there's that much money on the table, yeah. That's interesting. That's such a weird dynamic, isn't it? when I saw that yesterday, I'm thinking, what on earth is going on here? But when you hear about that type of money being thrown out there,
There's also thought that uh, Jim Knowles did not like Ryan Day kind of looking over his shoulder. And since Ryan Day gave up the play calling, this is the first season he gave up the play calling, which worked rather well, him being just the CEO. And he did tell the world that he was going to be more involved in the defense, special teams as well, but mostly defense. And there's thought that since the defense on some big stages did not perform up to par, that Ryan Day had some things to say and kind of pushed his influence onto the defense and the approach.
yeah, I can see not wanting to be meddled with by a guy who probably doesn't know a whole lot about defense. I mean, you can't be a jack of all trades, Mark. I mean, he's an offensive coach. I don't know why. Why is he getting involved? That's probably what I'd be thinking if I'm Mark Knowles. Like, dude, mind your own business. Let me do me. I'm the DC at Ohio State, for Pete's sake. Leave me alone. I could see that. I don't fault Jim Knowles for doing that. He's got to do what's best for him. Players leave all the time now. You know, we went both ways, but we used to say, well, players should be able to leave because coaches leave. And now I'm going to say, hey, coaches should be able to accept better jobs because the players are getting millions of dollars transfer every single year. And what was
Sure.
this Jeremiah? What was this Jeremiah Smith to Iowa rumor? Was that just did that start on?
To
Did that
Iowa?
start? Well, let me. It's FanDuel. FanDuel just throws out stuff, don't they?
Well, there was
Jeremiah.
talk about some other programs throwing like $4 million at him. I don't know what he's making at Ohio State.
It's not even. It's just people. It's just these different. Let me show you the tweet originally that got this started.
Wouldn't that be something?
It would be something. FanDuel tweeted, if Jeremiah Smith leaves Ohio State, where should he transfer? And look at the schools that are on the list.
Well, I get Miami and Michigan, but
Well,
why in the world would
first,
he want to go? He almost signed at Miami, for one
okay,
thing.
well, so I
That's
think
where he's
they're just
from.
this must just be a traffic bait, a clickbait thing. They're trying to get people to retweet and engagement, right? Is that what it is?
Oh, I think so. He came out and tweeted that he's not going anywhere.
Well, I'm surprised Iowa hasn't been able to get him. You know, can you
Wouldn't that be
imagine though?
something?
Could you imagine if Iowa somehow there was some big? What if some donor was like, "Bro, I got 10 million. I want Jeremiah Smith in a Hawkeye uniform," and they bring in Jeremiah Smith? Would they be? What would that do to Iowa? Would they become a contender nationally?
You would
With
have a
one,
blockbuster live stream. I know that.
would that make Iowa a contender? Would having a Heisman level wide receiver make Iowa a national contender in your mind?
That in and of itself,
Yeah,
if they had exactly the same performance, which they probably are going to be hard pressed to do, right, on the defensive side of the ball, especially
I think they're going to be
this
better on the
next year.
defensive side of the ball.
Oh,
I thought
okay.
they underachieved this year, frankly.
Well, I believe they did as well, but I just see all that NFL talent and all
I
those
know,
veterans on that
I
side of the
know.
ball.
I just have to think Phil Parker will coach his tail off because he's probably, you know, bugged to death by the fact that they struggled.
You wonder if down deep Kirk would be a bit annoyed by that situation
By what situation?
if Jeremiah Smith came to Ohio State. Of course,
Came
he
to
would
Iowa, you mean?
came to Iowa.
What would annoy him about that, Kirk?
They'd have to
Besides
feed him the ball.
that would annoy Kirk?
I'm just the way he coaches and wants his program to run.
Heaven forbid. I mean, go retire if that. I mean, I'm not saying you're kind of just go retire if you can't deal with a electric Heisman level player, Jeremiah Smith, demanding the ball. Come on. What are we doing? This guy, he's generational, man. He's generational.
That would be something.
So you're saying I'll give you a line from Dumb and Dumber. You're telling me there's a chance here. FanDuel is giving Iowa a chance, but Jeremiah Smith has already pledged his allegiance to Ohio State, correct?
Yeah, this has been simmering ever since the national
All right.
championship game, and I saw a post where I saw an article where he posted just to say, "I'm
Yeah.
staying here. This is where I'm at. All's good."
Well, it'll be interesting to see what Lester can do with these receivers. I'm intrigued by it. He's only got one guy out of the portal, but heard good things about a couple other young players, and I still think Jacob Gill's the best guy they have on the roster. And health is obviously going to be important, but Reese Vanderzee going to be going into year 2, and they got a better quarterback presumably to throw to these guys. So there's no question there's intrigue with this offense. I don't even think the team is going to be worse. I really don't think. You brought up all the guys that they are losing so many players to the NFL, and you're absolutely right about that. But they underachieved. I mean, there's no way you can't look at you can't. This is the first year in quite a while where I would say the individuals underperformed based on the sum of the parts, right? Like everybody collectively, you would think would have performed at a certain level, and I think as a group they underperformed. Whereas I mean, I look back at the 20. What year was that they had all those draft picks? We went back here and looked at this. I think it was 20, the year after the 2010 season. They had tons of guys go to the league. 2010 was a disappointment. To me, this was a very similar year to 2010. 2016 is another example. Maybe not quite as many draft picks, but they still had some really good players go in 2016, like Kittle, Beathard, Desmond King, etc. So yeah, I'm going to be intrigued to see, but I think they're going to get better on the defensive end because I have faith in Phil Parker to figure that out, and I think they're going to get better on the offensive end because of Tim Lester.
They lost to 2 5-7 teams.
Michigan State and UCLA.
Yeah.
And then they blew 3 double-digit leads. 3.
Did they?
Iowa State, Missouri, UCLA. And then what were their other 2 losses? Ohio State and who am I missing? Who am I missing here? 8-5, right?
Michigan State, UCLA, Missouri, Ohio State, Iowa State.
4?
Or did I just say them? They lost 3 in conference. Ohio State, UCLA, Michigan State, Iowa State, Missouri.
Okay, I'm just counting wrong. That's 5. Yeah. Yeah, and you know what I was thinking last night? I was watching. I know you don't watch college basketball anymore, but last night I was up late after the men's postgame show, and I'm watching Iowa State, who, by the way, number 3 in the country on the men's side. I mean, they're just phenomenal. They lost last night at Arizona, which Arizona, they have been one of the most difficult. It's been one of the most difficult venues for any team to go and play for a number of years now. And Arizona needed a 3-quarter shot buzzer beater to send it to overtime. Made that shot, ended up beating Iowa State in overtime. But this is the first time that I can remember where I would say the Iowa State football program, as of right now, is in a probably more positive. I don't think you can deny that they're in a better place. They're coming off a Big 12 championship game appearance, and Iowa State men's basketball well ahead of where Iowa basketball is. And even Iowa State women's basketball, now that the Iowa women have kind of started to struggle. I mean, I know Iowa beat Iowa State this year on the hardwood, but man, you could almost argue the top 3 programs all lean toward Iowa State right now. And I don't know the last time I would have said that.
Well, I'm going to forget the 2 basketball programs for good reason, and maybe we get our buddy Levi on. Which, by the way, everyone, Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time, we've got an Iowa State channel, and we've got an Iowa State show with our guy Levi Stevenson. But get you and Levi together as a debate over the better football program right this second.
Oh, yeah. I wonder what he's going to say.
I know what he's going to say. That's why it would be a good debate.
As I stay objective and as I say, I think Iowa State may be a better program right now.
Well, you were using all 3 sports.
Yeah. But I think Iowa State's in a better place football-wise. I don't know that long-term they are.
Then we don't have a debate.
No, I don't think we have a debate right now. I don't think there's much of a debate.
Hmm.
It's more so just me conceding to Levi's fanboyism.
When is the last time you would have said that Iowa State had a better football program?
I mean, I program that's probably an extreme statement. I'm just saying where they're at right now,
Yeah.
like where I project them even in the next year, and combine that with what I saw this year. I don't think the program as a whole is going to, but I think that it's going to be much easier for Iowa State to slide back to 4-8 status than Iowa. I think Iowa's a more stable place.
And that should be part of the equation. And of course, the question that can't be answered is it would be fascinating if you could just play the Iowa football season in the Big 12. Just take last year's team and have them play in the Big 12 and see how well they would do.
But Iowa State also went to Iowa City and won.
Yeah, of course.
So, whether they blew a double-digit lead or not, that actually happened. And Iowa's got to come back over to Ames next year. So we'll have to do another live on location stream on the Voice of College Football.
We're here for you. You won't do it, but
only the real troopers, only the real fans of this network know what we're talking about. That's what's so amazing.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while. What year would that have been? That'd have been 4 years ago.
21.
That would have been 2021. Incredible. Yeah.
Corey was eager and anxious to get out there to campus and at the crack of dawn.
Yeah, it's good. Dawn hadn't even cracked yet, Mark. Dawn hadn't even cracked yet.
Yeah, some of those live shots or whatever. You did live shots. They weren't
Yeah,
recording.
it was dark out.
I remember how many times as I was passed out, I was reaching for my phone because I got to send another code.
Yeah, that actually happened.
And now 10,000 subs and still charging, and
yeah.
I'm just happy to have you one day a week, 1 hour per week.
No end in sight, Mark.
All right, Corey. I think we've done enough damage.
Okay.
Appreciate you being here.
Glad we really broke down those 3 offensive line commits. Listen. I think it's phenomenal that Iowa's got some recruiting momentum right now up front. I take so many of these commitments with a grain of salt until Iowa proves to me, and Kirk is part of that they will consistently, or I should say more efficiently, develop offensive linemen, 3-star offensive linemen. I'm not going to get excited about some old lineman unless they're, a 4 or 5-star kid. And I wouldn't normally care about recruiting rankings, but there's a lot of people that know a lot more about offensive line play than I do. So we'll see. They're projects, but they got a head coach who's an O-line guru. So as long as he's here, there's reason to have optimism even about less touted kids.
When is the next basketball post game?
We got live post game with Kashin tonight. So myself and Kashin Alexander will go live about 9 p.m. Central Time. Tip on BTN between the Hawks and the Wildcats, 7 p.m. Big game. Women got to. I mean, this is not a good Northwestern team that's coming into Carver. They got to win. Must win for Iowa. Got back on track by blowing out Washington on the road the other night. They got USC, who is a powerhouse, coming to school in a few days. So got to get this one and go into the break and get prepped for Caitlin Clark's jersey retirement here in about a week.
Oh, very cool.
Yep.
All right, folks, it's every Tuesday with Corey, and we should be back on schedule for the most likely 4:30 Central every Tuesday. So make it on back next week. And of course, join Corey tonight after the Hawkeyes women take on Northwestern. All right, Corey.
Thanks,
as
Mark.
always, thank you.